Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and as always it's my continuing mission to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. You know, gaming has always had its fair share of venerable series, titles like Splinter Cell, God of War, Batman, Gears of War, Metal Gear Solid, and others. And like them or hate them, there are enough examples of long series still able to have some excellent gameplay titles that it always begs the question, what's it like on the other side of the coin? When do you say enough is enough if the first of the games aren't actually good? And that brings us to the Sniper Ghost Warrior titles, a series of games where you're spirited away into enemy territory, a special forces suppository shoved into the bad end of a political wasteland to colon cleanse the regions. The problem is, the games have really never been good, or at least consistently good. They have their moments because draining someone's decision fluid from their brain case from 400 yards away never really stops being funny or fun. You always have to wonder, why are we here? And here we are at the imminent release for number 3. So let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for Sniper Ghost Warrior 3. One big load, unfortunately shaped little brothers, obese special forces, and the real stairway to heaven. Graphics are up first. You know, despite any other issues Ghost Warrior has, and it has many, at times it can actually look phenomenal, like creeping through the underbrush of a mysterious forest to get that perfect kill shot to take out 2 bad guys in one go, like you somehow found the magic bullet Kevin Costner wouldn't shut up about in JFK, or ripping through snowy drifts in your criminally underpowered all-terrain vehicle. At those times, Sniper can look decidedly gorgeous, and much of that is due to the thick-laced lighting effects and post-processing applied on any version from the Xbox One all the way up to the PC. Now, animations, while not amazing, do a fairly good job informing the gamer of what's occurring, even if they're so far away that they can't hear if an enemy's come upon the misplaced head of his best friend that you just popped off like a friggin' wine cork a couple minutes earlier. And while it is open world, it's actually just giant open areas. This is all done versus the smaller mission hubs of the past titles, which means some ample space to plan and strategize the best way to exfoliate someone's body from their neck. Now, sneaking up close to enemies and good guys alike does show you that their modeling and detail are nothing to write home about. Now, while texture work is elevated far past the prior titles, as it probably should be, there are still a large number of really raw texture works that look like they were filtered through the magical cottage cheese filter of uglying +3 to low detail. But the real issue here is that the game is woefully unready for prime time, because while this is all great stuff, the game has technical problems everywhere. First, it has issues on the consoles, absolutely, and yes, this is with today's patch. It can run fine for hours, and then without warning, you're starting to get a strange stuttering and frame rate micro stutter that can make the game almost difficult to play, and certainly very ugly to enjoy. Problems continue with textures popping in and out all over the place, all kinds of animation problems with items you interact with in the game world, like ladders, where for reasons unknown our germaphobe protagonist hover hands up and down them, repelling himself with his man grippers a good inch below where the friggin' ladder rung is. Now, of course, with all this absolutely unsteady frame rate, the 30 FPS promise we got goes out the window on the consoles. Now, on the PC, it's a different story, and many of the issues, of course, don't occur here depending on the hardware you have, but I wouldn't say it's optimized, with a 1440p resolution and all the settings at their highest being somewhat dippy when 60 frames per second is your goal, and that's even while running higher-end hardware like a 1080 and an i7. Altogether, Sniper isn't an ugly game, and many times it's far from that. But sometimes good looking is farther away from this game than even the best scope could ever allow you to zoom in on. Sound, music, and voice.
Remember, John, quiet. We need to take them one by one before they realize we're here. Let's concentrate, old boy. First... Fuck you!
Another separatist top lieutenant. Vicious, sadist, pure evil.
But nothing on Tomas or David?
That intel will come. I know...
When it comes to audio, sound's always up first. I feel a pattern developing here. Once again, we're greeted with the number of oddities making what's good difficult to remove from what's bad. It's like scrubbing a dirty pot and wondering if you can eat whatever just comes off. Now, don't get me wrong, gun sounds aren't bad at all, and with the right system and setup, the low-end boom of the larger calibers is like sitting next to a goddamn cannon when they go off without their silencers attached. And many of the weapons have smaller tertiary attachment sounds, and honestly, there are a few things as satisfying as hearing that click when you adjust for elevation and windage. Except You're never sure if those sounds are actually going to work just right, because while playing Sniper, you're almost assaulted with an army of issues. Environmental sounds are woefully glitched, and it's a damned lottery if effects like echo and reverb are even going to be applied in places that they shouldn't, and not applied when they should. Or effects just being wrong, like you sprinting up the rocky creek bed of a military base's only weak point and noticing that instead of running in water, it sounds like you're running across the friggin' Sahara. When Sniper is working right, everything sounds good, but in the end, it rarely ever does. Music. You know, here there's barely any, and if it weren't for the extraordinarily long loading of the main levels, you wouldn't even get to hear the one song that I actually think is good, a vocal ditty that is actually pretty enjoyable to hear the first time. The rest is overall ambient affairs that leaves a great deal to be desired, and it's not because it doesn't play a lot of the time, because that's fine. It's a stealth game where situational awareness will matter. It's really just that it does sound like someone leaned on the keyboard in Fruity Loops when they got a couple granulizers and an RX synth maker with a free audio card coupon. Absolutely nothing to write home about. Voice. So this is average at best and probably a little worse. You have your main protagonist growl-tearing his way through the game's scenery, one part cold-blooded killer, the next part thespian with a 40-year career of smoking Camel on filters, resulting in a cancer Sturgis rally in his throat. It's really just all over the place, and those backing him up are even a little bit worse, including the fact that two of the supporting cast sound so alike that it's hard not to assume they were played by the same female voice actress, who was told a Russian accent by itself will hide your identity, so why not just play two people, da? It is passable, but man, is it not very good. Gameplay. So, Sniper starts out like all love stories with war and driving a truck through a foreign land, single-handedly negotiating peace deals by signing them with a 7.62 pin delivered above the speed of sound. Honestly, there's really very little story to speak of through much of the game until the later half, though it does try by thrusting you into a tutorial to learn the ropes, and then boom, you're pretty much in an open world. When I say boom, I actually should say boom, because the loading for locations runs more than 4 minutes most of the time. Now, once you're loaded in, that can actually be pretty cool because this is really the first somewhat open world version of the game, and in many ways that plays to its strengths of stealth strategy and strategic redeployment, which is a fancy word for running around like a schoolgirl when the bad guys end up finding you. Throughout the game, you have the main and side missions. The main, of course, push you further in the story, and the side missions just give you more stuff. Now, doing just the former is about 12 to 16 hours, depending on difficulty. Adding in side missions can easily put the game's completion time up around the 30-hour mark, especially if you search the land for the game's version of Assassin's Creed Feathers, known as interest points. These are spread all over the world, and here's where little story bits are unlocked or interesting moments are seen, like coming up on a camping area where wolves have just killed the owner. Once I relinquished them of their lives, I trotted in and found the expected items to collect, but as I scoured around the area, the game's atmosphere sort of let this place sink in, and I began to question, why was this person out here in the first place? Or why was their gun 10 feet away from them when they were fighting off the wolves with knives? It's not an instant thing and it takes a while, but another moment had me following what looked like the remnants of a vehicle being pushed off the road in a road rage incident. And I followed it to this massive ravine, and all the way at the bottom, I could see the vehicle. Now, at some point, you're going to be shooting guns. You're going to pull out your trusty weapons and go to town. And this is a collection of nice near and far distance death dealers. The weapons all run makes and models that you would expect and have customization options, which might mean a variety of scopes, camo, grips, ammunition types, and just overall upgrades. But I'm not sure you need all of them, and I'll get to one reason in a second, but the first is the fact that when you shoot someone in the face with your sniper rifle, they take an instant dirt nap, and for the most part, the gunplay, when it comes to that, is done well, with higher difficulties having wind and distance affect your shots, but it's the shooting that counts, and lining up a shot across water from your high vantage point on normal is a whole other affair than when you're on expert and you fire that bullet and watch as it looks like it's a starving man rushing towards a friggin' buffet and doesn't know what to eat first, moving left, then right, up and down, then left again, only to hopefully hit the target. It is really good stuff, and that's where the game excels. Between missions, or just when you want, you can return to your main base to stock up, buy or craft ammo, and pass time if you want to do a mission at night versus, let's say, in the brightness of daytime. Lastly, as you perform activities, you get XP in 3 categories that basically go from technical to stealth to all-out warrior. When you spend points in those categories, you can get more items from your drops or magically somehow find more pockets in your uniform to hold stuff. And here's where the problems begin. First, most skills augment your own ability to do things like run farther or hold your breath longer, which is crazy when you basically realize that your Special Forces guy, trained from the age of just past taking off his big boy pull-up diapers, and is let loose on the world without any kind of cardio training. And I'm not lying, he can climb mountains that would make those goats on YouTube say, yeah, screw that. but he must have a 7-carton-a-day smoking habit and chase it with bottles labeled fat from McDonald's. Not only can this dude run less than 1 minute, but holding your breath for aim shots can be audibly taxing on the player, as you can hear him straining like he has the world's worst MRE poop on deck and hasn't drank any water in 2 days. Additionally, there is a massive damage drop-off from any weapons not expected in a game with Sniper in its name, and I get it, most games like this usually aren't about that, because if it's called Sniper, why would you run up to someone and knock on their door like the world's worst Western? But the game has many moments of just that. But I mean, I get it, a 45 won't kill everyone every time, but when I unload enough rounds into a bad guy's face that could be brought up on war charges, and he George Bush Juniors them, like his gooey vitals are dodging a pissed off pair of kids traveling at hundreds of feet per second, it's a bit disconcerting. Of course, that brings us to AI. Now, as you guys know, I test difficulty in all settings from normal to a level just encroaching that dude in Saving Private Ryan who could shoot the crazy off a Korean dictator at 4,000 yards. And sadly, there are issues everywhere. What looked like good AI from a distance with enemies keeping their heads well below emptying points and barely peeking out of rat holes can look hilarious when you're up close and they try to hide from you by leaping into the same ledge you're on and crouching down beside you. But that being said, I adore that they can reach out and touch you in their own way. For example, when they call in mortar strikes in your expected area and you have mere seconds to hightail it to somewhere else safe before God basically points to that area on the map and says, fuck this particular place. Luckily though, all the control is mostly spot on with a couple adjustments made here and there in the options. You can pretty much dial this in to control the way you would want, and the vehicle, though you're not driving it a ton, works well for what it does. Fun factor. The issue with Sniper is it can be wickedly fun and also stunningly not all in the same 5 minutes. For example, your drone. With it, you can send it off, have it mark enemies, remotely take over enemy turrets, crack their camera feeds, and lure them away. It's these moments where everything feels strategic and just absolutely nailed down, and I love that part of Sniper. The problem is, it never lasts. If you aren't following through the world, you're meeting up too close with enemy AI. If you're out in the woods, you're noticing sounds cutting in and out, or the wrong effects playing, or worse still, the insidious frame rate micro stutter and issues that crop up in the middle of nowhere without rhyme or reason. Right now, the entire experience is filtered through that and so altered by it that whatever greatness is there always needs a large series of excuses to get into it. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. This is a rent or deep sale for PC. Plain and simple, this thing needed a ton more time to cook. There is a lot to like about this game. Plain and simple, it requires too much, too soon for that investment. So I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out Twitter or Patreon. That's how I continue to give you guys these reviews. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.